The same thinking holds true for the owner of an enterprise. That founder of the company. The letting go process is very, very difficult to do. In fact, I would recommend that any CEO, regardless of whether they own the company outright or not, that any CEO, as they approach their early 60s, they need to go find a psychologist. They need to find someone to help them start thinking about what are you going to do next. Because these are people who typically don't use alarm clocks, right? These are people who typically wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. They're going 6, 7 days a week. And they have high energy, acute minds, and they don't do well with boredom. And they absolutely do not do well with boredom after a company is sold. And they are liquid. And they have access to cash. Lots of it. Probably more cash than they've ever had their entire career. And they do things that are stupid with all this money. Sometimes it's, well, you know what, I'm going to play the markets. What do they possibly know about being a financial investment firm? They don't. That's not what they did their whole life. They made plastic widgets and stuff. Or they do things that begin with G. Right? They play golf, they go places, they garden, they try gourmet cooking. None of it works because it's not enough to keep them occupied. Let's think about this more systemically. The spouse never wants this person hanging around the house. Particularly at a time when they are needier than they've been for the last 35 or 40 years. Bored, with money, and power tools in the garage. It's dangerous. The managers of the company, are they prepared for a sale? Are they prepared for continuity? How clear are we on what we're going to do with this asset? How do we view that as our responsibility to an asset and to our stakeholders, to our employees, to our children, to our in-laws, to our partners? Right? But, you know, the thing with entrepreneurs is they're typically not very good planners. Right? They don't like to plan. There's no juju in planning, right? There's no zing, there's no zip. You know, these are deal junkies. These are people who like to get things done. Okay? And the idea of intellectually kicking back and doing strategic planning typically is not what they most like to do. So, going back to the idea of a family enterprise, let's consider for a moment the stakeholders, and let's consider for a moment or imagine a situation in which, we don't have markers, in which there is a founder and a spouse and 4 adult children. Okay. What do you suppose the founder's will reads as it relates to the deployment of the voting stock of the corporation at his death? Come on.
Spouse.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of a manufacturer should this be? What do we want to manufacture? Oh, I know. Let's make believe that we process vegetable stuff, right? We squeeze it down into juices and we cook it off into powders that we then sell off to McCormick or to McDonald's or what have you, right? So we squeeze garlic and onion, trainloads of this stuff, right? Every day. We have presses, we have people. This is what they do every day. How long has it been? Okay, how long has it been, Bill, since that spouse was in the plane?
Forever.
Amen. Right? Who now has voting control of the corporation? Amen. Right? So already one might start to think this doesn't make a lot of sense, but the accountant and the tax planner, okay, are thinking life's good. You know what? We have minimized our tax liabilities here. It's about so much more than that. So, starting place at least for family enterprises, is around getting shareholders aligned. Okay, so we need our 4 children, who, by the way, probably own 25% each of the non-voting stock, because we followed the advice of counsel, and that's what we did. We chose S-corp status, right? We have voting, non-voting stock. The founder kept the voting control, passed the non-voting stock down, right? That was divided equally. Why do we divide it equally among our 4 children? Because we love them all equally, right? That's what we do. So if we cannot have our shareholders aligned, the 4 kids and the spouse and the management team, aligned around the following, thank you very much, aligned around the following areas: growth, risk, profitability, liquidity expectations, culture, and what is the purpose of our ownership? Why do we own this enterprise anyway? Why do we want to keep it? It never ceases to intrigue me how often I receive a phone call from any one of a number of siblings or any one of a number of cousins in which the ownership group is not aligned, and they've never had the conversation around, why are we doing this anyway? What is the purpose of our ownership? What is the purpose of our capital? What is the purpose of our investment here? What's our risk tolerance? It is crucial that that alignment among executive management and ownership, whether you're going to keep it or sell it, is also crucial for strategic integrity. You can't possibly expect a management team to realistically come up with a solid strategic plan for an operating company if, in fact, they don't know what their marching orders are. And growth is not always the right answer. Right? It's a powerful aid. Having shareholder alignment is also a very powerful aid for the board of directors. But at the end of the day, it has to begin with communication. It has to start with talking. And the papas or the mamas, the founders in this room, right, or the founders of the companies or the shareholder and controllers of the companies that you all work with, this is not necessarily the ideal person to, on their own, right, decide the future of this company, if in fact it's a family business. Now, if they own it 100% and they're just an entrepreneur, not just, but they're an entrepreneur, and they started this business with the intention of, I'm going to harvest this thing, right? I'm going to take as much out as I possibly can every year, and when the ride is over, I'm just going to sell it. Fine, knock yourself out. If this person's over the age of 60, that just seems to rarely be their motivation by that point. By the time a founder or a leader is in their 60s, they're probably starting to think about something more meaningful than how do I get a lot of cash out of this, because they're probably already comfortable. It's really important too, if there are multiple shareholders, that there be a party line. You should, I think, by the time the chairman or the controlling shareholder or shareholders, by the time they are 60 years old, I think that there should be absolute clarity on how you intend to deploy the control of this company going forward. Either our mantra is, the Mendoza Screw Company is a family business and we intend to remain a family business forever, in which case all of the employees know that, the kids or the cousins or the nieces or the nephews will continue to control this company, does not necessarily mean that they need to be CEO. There are lots of examples of CEOs now of family enterprises who don't own any stock. Okay, the stock is retained by the family, but in those cases, there's almost always really solid governance. Read as a board of directors with probably independent outsiders on it. And they take it seriously. So we think about, do we want to keep it or do we want to sell it? Again, it's a huge decision. It is going, if it's a family enterprise, it is going to change the dynamic of the family if you sell it. I guarantee it. Either because, the senior generation is going to be around more with nothing to do, or because people are going to have a lot of cash. More cash than they ever expected they have. And even if you dump it into trusts, and you're the trustee, and then your spouse is the successor trustee along with the family lawyer, whatever, by the time they turn 35 or 40, they're still probably going to have access to a significant amount of cash. And the question becomes, again, going back to and having family meetings and talking about what is the purpose of capital? And are we prepared to handle it and to put it to work? So at the end of the day, it's a choice. Whether we keep it, whether we sell it. And all I'm suggesting here is that it requires thought. This is not a short-term engagement, and it's likely as not, I'm preaching to the choir here, otherwise you probably would not be here today. So always knowing what is the long-term vision for our company and what is the purpose of our ownership is critical. Do all of the stakeholders who are going to have input into the keep-sell decision, do they all understand the vision and the strategy and the rationale that underlies that strategy? Do they understand why we're making acquisitions? Do they understand why we're reinvesting in plant and equipment? Do they get it? Are they clear on the idea of a lasting legacy? Have they taken time to talk about any sense of responsibility that they may feel to their employees, to their community, to their customers, to their vendors, to their lenders, to their advisors? And the thing of it is that it's not binary. If there is a banker or an attorney or a financial advisor in the room, they will tell you that there's more than one way to skin the cat if the purpose of a sale is to have access to liquidity. Right? If the purpose of the sale is around, we're doing this to protect family harmony because I don't want my 4 children to argue over the toys. If the purpose of the keep or the sell decision is around employee security, employment security, or does it have to do with reducing our risk? Because most of our cookies are invested in this single company, right? So are we looking to invest in other things and spread it out? But there are other ways to get access to capital, not the least of which are things like ESOPs, right? Or bringing in outside equity, or taking on debt. There are other ways to do it. So I just would advise that people think about why are we selling, and is a sale the right solution? Are we asking ourselves the right questions? For those who advocate continuity of the family enterprise, that is to say that we transition the ownership to another generation, I think they too need to have a compelling reason for doing it. And that rationale needs to be discussed as adults among all of the family members. And P.S., to my way of thinking, we include spouses under the definition of family. If you exclude spouses from those conversations,